Let's continue our breakdown of today's contest from a fellow who's coming from a player, coach, and a broadcaster perspective. Glad to have our good friend John Saluations as he presents his pregame salutations. Coach Sal, how are you?
I'm great, Bubba. How are you doing?
We're always good. It's a football day, and it's a double header in the city of Hamilton, too, with the Forge FC playing for the championship against their rival Cavalry FC. Outstanding crowd expected, too. So with the Grey Cup coming, boy, it's really great to be in our area, as you well know, in terms of a sports perspective.
It certainly is. You know, the Grey Cup being the one thing in Canada that I've always admired, the fact that every community everywhere tunes into the Grey Cup. And you'll see so many people from so many walks of life come into Hamilton and enjoy that great festival for a whole week.
You know, before we dig right into the strategy of today's game, which is wacky in itself, as Andy and I just discussed, did any of the individual team awards surprise you?
You know, surprise is not a good word to use in that category because
both of you killed me for that.
Yeah, there are so many guys that are deserving, but you can only give it to one. So I think the announcements as they came out really gave credence to those players who were selected. It does not ever take away from those who were not selected. So, to me, it was a good choice.
Coach, if we're looking at the game tonight, I think talking to you is I'm most excited about because I got to get the coach's perspective, and maybe all coaches aren't the same. Maybe certain coaches would approach this game differently, but what would your philosophy be going into this game?
Well, you know, I think on Ticats Audio Network, Mike Daly summed it up the best. This is a game of smoke and mirrors. And what I mean by that is, are you going to show your hand or do you give them a bit of a head fake? You know, it's all about how the coordinators decide to call the game. So, to me, you want to try to give Montreal a lot to worry about and a lot of time spent in practice on things that you may never use in the game. But at the same time, the smoke and mirror idea will be prevalent on Montreal's side too. So after you play this game, it's up to the coaches to sit down and make the decision as to what they're actually wanting to do and what they will do in the semi-game, which comes up next week. So the idea being both teams want to have the most different things in the game that are still sound things that the coaches have to worry about. And it's really, and Andy, you talked about this, it's a learning experience for the individual players. You know, can you do something in your individual matchups that maybe surprises your opponent across from you?
Yeah, well, you said the word sound. It needs to be sound. So if you're going to put something new into this game for the other team to have to practice in the following week, well, you also have to practice it this time. So you can't spend too much of your time working on things you're not going to be using. You know, you always hear coaches saying, control what you control, play our game, just play it well. So there's got to be some kind of balance, but perhaps like a special teams fake, or would you think some new blitzes or some new coverages? What would some smoke and mirror type of situations be as far as plays themselves?
Well, for Hamilton, you know, what you want to do is you want to show as many different offensive formations as possible. Where the idea is that Montreal has to look at these different formations and motions and decide, you know, well, if they do use this is what we must do. So this forces them to do some things in practice. And the same logic applies to the defense, you know. Show them some blitzes, some fronts, some stunts, some stemming in the defensive line, run some twists, use some linebackers and down linemen in the twists. All of this to give Montreal a lot to worry about. But they've got to be things that are sound things. So if you try to do something odd, something that doesn't fit your game plans over the past 17 weeks, they're going to recognize that. It has to be something that you're going to put on the field that potentially you could use next week.
Yeah, I like that. Running your plays, but just a slightly different look to begin them, and would create a lot of preparation headaches for the other team. What about personnel-wise for tonight? What is your feel of how much Bo Levi is going to play? How much the starters are going to play? What's the breakdown going to be?
Well, I'm glad that Mitchell's going to play. Then number one, there's no way they could hold him out of this ball game. He needs that time on the field. The guys they did rest, Butler, White, Schultz on offense, Leonard, Sales, Carney, those are guys that need the rest. But if you're going to start your number one quarterback, you're going to start your number one offensive line. That's always something that we talked about in the coaches' room. And for me, when we were in this situation before, it was very easy because Mike Kerrigan, our quarterback, had bonuses as a starter and 50% of the snaps. So we knew he was going to play. So it was real easy for the offensive line coach, myself, to just say, okay, guys, you're all playing. And that's the way it is.
What would your message be to the team in the locker room, like right before the game or the night before, just how your motivational speech, or how do you attack the field, or what's your message?
Well, I think the message is very simple. For those of the players that are resting and are not with us today, this gives you, the second player, an opportunity to be seen on film. So you go out there and you do the best you can do to show that you belong on this team. There's some practice roster players that are going to make the front line today in this ball game. It's very important for those guys that they play and play well. So the message is, there's no meaningless games. The only meaningless game is a game you are not a participant in. So as I say to you, when you hit the field today, give it everything you got.
What are a few of those players that you've kind of going to have your eye on, that you've been kind of waiting to see in the starting role tonight?
Well, I think Fleet Davis. I mean, when you got a name like Fleet and you're a running back, you've got to have something in your tank. So I'd really like to see him. I'd like to see Van Zyl get in the ball game. Give Revenberg a break in this ball game. Chris Van Zyl deserves to play and is probably going to be ready to play when it comes time for the playoffs starting next week. But I want to see those guys play, and I want to see Sunderland when he has to go up against Mack, the great receiver for Montreal. I want to see what he does against a very good player, the very best player perhaps, for Montreal.
Well, we saw Tyon Fleet Davis in the preseason. Looked very promising. So I agree with you. And Chris Van Zyl, a guy who's won the most outstanding offensive lineman of the CFL before. He just had some injuries in the past few seasons, and he's not a young pup anymore. So I agree with you. We got to get him some reps and get his feet wet and get back into game speed, because we could really need him in the playoffs.
Yeah, we need him on the roster. We need him on the roster because he gives so much advice to the rest of the offensive line.
Coach Sal, we're just a week away from the Grey Cup playoffs, and we certainly look forward to getting it together again. Appreciate you taking the time for us, and enjoy today's matchup.
Always have time for Bubba and Andy. Talk to you again, guys.
Right on, my friend.